You're listening to Sports Radio Detroit.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Platte NBA Minute right here on Sports Radio Detroit. As always, I'm your host, Chris Platte. Going to be talking all awards, all NBA, all of that stuff. I decided to take a break. The last couple weeks I've talked about the playoffs, and I feel like the listeners as well as myself want to take a step back. So what I'm going to do is this week I'm going to be talking, again, all of the awards, all NBA, all the Defensive Player of the Year, MVP, all of that stuff I'm going to be breaking down to you, giving my predictions, and then next week we'll get back into the playoff hunt as we're about 10 to 12 games left in the season for most teams, and then the following week I will do a final awards. So this will be like the pre-awards, the Platte pre-awards, we're calling it here. But first, before we get to today's topics, I do want to make one quick announcement here, and that is that the Sports Radio Detroit Female Personality Contest, yes, the annual Detroit Female Personality Contest here on Sports Radio Detroit is back. It has actually gotten underway. If you did not catch it, I have all the dates for you right now. We are currently in the middle of the first round. It started on March 19th, but goes till the 23rd. So as of the time of this recording, you have 2 more days to vote. So go out and vote. The second round, we have the March 24th through March 28th. And then the Elite 8 starts the 29th of March and will go to the 3rd of April. Final 4 starts on April Fool's, but that is not a joke. April 4th through April 7th, and then the title game is April 8th through April 12th. So go out there, vote on this. I sound like I'm making a voting PSA, like it's an election or something, but you get the point. Go out, vote. The link is on Detroit's website, Sports Radio Detroit. You can always get it there. So be sure to check out the link, and we may even include it in the episode, in the description of this podcast. But anyways, now let's get to the NBA stuff. So this week I'm excited because, these last couple weeks, I enjoy the playoff race. I enjoy it as much as anybody, but I wanted to take a break because I felt like the last couple weeks we talked about a lot of NBA playoff stuff. We talked about matchups. We talked about who's going to get in, who's going to get out, and it's changing every week. But there seems to be just a big portion of fans that are kind of just ready for the playoffs. They're kind of over the whole playoff hunt. So I wanted to take a break. And what better way to do that with the first annual Sports Radio Detroit pre-Platte NBA podcast NBA season awards. I don't know, still workshopping the title, so stay with me there. But I'm going to go into all NBA and then all of the awards. So I'll start with all NBA because that to me is the very interesting one. And thank God I don't have a vote because there's a ton of financial ramifications for a lot of players involved in this. So it's mainly the guards too. So Kemba Walker, of course, as you know, if he gets the All-NBA slot, he is eligible for that Supermax extension. I'm sure you've heard that on several platforms. Bradley Beal, ironically enough, is also eligible for the Supermax extension if he makes it, which would be interesting and give the Wizards their second Supermax. And considering how well the first one panned out, that's sarcasm with John Wall, I can't imagine the Washington Wizards really hoping Bradley Beal makes an All-NBA this season. And then, of course, Clay also eligible for the Supermax if he makes the All-NBA third team or above. So there's a lot of financial ramifications here when it comes to this award. Let's jump into it. I mean, since we're starting with the guards, let's start with the guards. So the way I broke it down is I had the guards that were locks, and I had to kind of debate for the last two. So you're allowed 6 guards, and the people that qualify are James Harden, Kyrie, Steph Curry, Damian Lillard, Russell Westbrook, Ben Simmons, Bradley Beal, Kemba Walker, Klay Thompson, DeMar DeRozan. Basically every guard qualifies, but those are the players. Mainly, I had to point out that Ben Simmons qualifies as a guard and a forward. So we'll do this instead of by first team, second team, third team, we'll just do this by the 3 positions, which are guards, forwards, and centers. And I do want to note that guards that were on my list for contention originally, or I think would be on my list had they been fully healthy, is Victor Oladipo and Chris Paul. Chris Paul not so much, but Victor Oladipo especially was having a fantastic year before his unfortunate injury, but he's just missing too many games, so he's not going to make an All-NBA team. So that being said, my locks. I think it was very simple when it came to my locks. James Harden, Steph Curry, Kyrie, and Damian Lillard. That was it. Those were my four locks when it came to guards. And, I really don't see a scenario where any one of those four don't make it. So then essentially now you're fighting between multiple guards for the last two spots. Here's who's in contention. So you got Russell Westbrook, Ben Simmons, Bradley Beal, Kemba Walker, Klay Thompson, DeMar DeRozan. So that being said, I'm pulling up NBA.com as we speak for a little bit of statistical background. But when I was doing this, because I don't have all my stat notes on here, so I did want to look up something. But I will say Westbrook is as near a lock as there can be to me, because I know he's historically bad shooting. I know he's actually turned it around in this last month, upping his true shooting percentage and three-point percentage. So that's helped. But I don't care how bad his shooting is. Russell Westbrook just has an undeniable impact on the game. He is a guy that when he is out there, because of his intensity, because of his desire, his passion, whatever cliche you want to use, it is very true when it comes to Westbrook. That affects not only the Oklahoma City Thunder, but the opposing team as well. And it's just like, man, I got to go against this guy for 48 minutes because he is a beast. He is an animal. Again, he is relentless. And I just feel like he's a guard that of really all the guards on this list, he's probably top three. He's probably right there with Curry and Harden as one of the three guards in the league you just don't want to go against because of how intense he is and how bad he wants it. So to me, just his sheer impact. Of course, he's having the triple-double still. He's playing well too. He's actually playing pretty nice off the ball as well with Dennis Schroeder. That's working quite nicely. So I like Westbrook. I think he's made some strides this year. Especially on the defensive end too. He's pretty much become passable on defense, and that's really all you can ask for when you're an elite talent on the other end of the floor. So Westbrook to me is pretty much the easy fifth. Again, the only thing that doesn't make him a lock is just the fact that his shooting numbers are so atrocious. But as I continue to talk, and I think I'm going to count him as a lock, so I'll actually move him to a fifth because, all these reasons that I stated, I think he's just a clear shoulder above everybody else in this contention. Now the last spot comes down to this where it gets really interesting. Again, Ben Simmons, Bradley Beal, Kemba Walker, Klay Thompson, DeMar DeRozan. And to me, it really comes down between three guys. So there's Bradley Beal, who's been averaging damn near 30 points a game since the All-Star break. He's been on a tear. He's the only reason the Wizards are even somewhat in mediocre playoff contention somehow, some way. He's just been playing spectacular. And he is just really emerged as a great player. We already knew he was last season in the previous couple seasons, but this season is clearly his best season. Coincidentally, without Wall, maybe not a coincidence, just putting that out there. But Bradley Beal has played fantastic this season. And then Kemba Walker. So this was the one thing I wanted to double check in the standings actually really quickly was just the idea of when it comes to Bradley Beal versus Kemba, right? Both of those teams are outside looking in on the playoffs currently. They are 2 games apart. So they're 2 games apart. Bradley Beal has been performing better than Kemba Walker has, especially over this last, I'd say 3 months, pretty much since the start of the calendar year. If you guys remember, Kemba had that super hot November where he was just balling, and then he rolled his ankle, and he's been kind of just off and on ever since. He He's had some nights where his shooting percentages just look awful, but then he's also had some great nights. And you just look at that Charlotte team, and I know the Wizards team is a dumpster fire as well, but that's more a personality issue. Like, the Charlotte Hornets are actually just bad. Like, they really don't have anything outside of Kemba that can work and really just help the offense. So Kemba does have an extreme load to carry, and so I do want to take that into consideration when voting. But however, to me, Bradley Beal is just playing better. Bradley Beal is playing better, and I think in a vacuum, you take Bradley Beal and Kemba Walker. I think most people would take Bradley Beal over Kemba Walker. And I hate to be that guy that kind of uses the argument of just who's the better player, but I think when it's so close like this, that's really what it comes down to for me. So as I'm filling out this list, as I'm filling out the as I'm filling out the All NBA, that to me is an important factor. It's just, okay, if the seasons are pretty similar, pretty comparable, then who's just the better player? And that to me is Bradley Beal. So Bradley Beal has earned my 6th spot. So once again, my 6 guards are James Harden, Kyrie, Steph Curry, Damian Lillard, and Bradley Beal. And then all consideration to Klay as well. I think Klay should be in this because the Warriors are the Warriors, and Klay somehow, some way, is over 40% from 3. I don't know if you guys remember, because it seems like forever ago the way the NBA moves, but at the beginning of the season, Klay was, for the first month, he was shooting terrible from 3. Like, awful. He had that one game against the Bulls, and then I think there was another, if I'm not mistaken, where he hit 10 threes. And those 2 games, outside of those 2 games, he was abysmal. Like not just not Klay, not just below Klay average, but bad. Like, as in, like, this was the guy that, like, if you were a defense, you'd want him to shoot a 3. Now, of course, nobody ever took that shooting slump seriously and left him open willingly and intentionally, but it was, if you were to just look at if you were to remove the name and look at the numbers, you'd be like, yeah, we're okay with that guy shooting 3s. And now somehow it's above 40%. So he is just scorching. I believe it's been in the last 3 months. I believe he's at 46 or 47% from 3. So he's really shot up his 3-point volume. And now let's move to the forwards. So the forwards to me was actually really easy, honestly, and that's because you got Giannis, who's the spoiler in my opinion, the MVP. Then you got Paul George, who's an MVP candidate. LeBron is LeBron. Kevin Durant. So those are and then Blake Griffin's my other lock. So I got 5 locks. And then the 6th one comes down to Kawhi, Ben Simmons, or Aldridge. Now, Kawhi would be a lock if he played more games. He's currently missed 19 games. And with about 10 to 12 games left, you got to assume he's going to miss probably like 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6 more games. So that puts him at missing over a quarter of the season. So that's a lot of time. So that, to me, makes him, that's the only reason he's not a lock. I think he really is a lock when it comes down to it. I think the 6 that I have, the LeBron, KD, Giannis, Kawhi, Paul George, and Blake Griffin, I think those are clearly the 6 best. Aldridge has had a good season, but he's been up and down a little bit too much for my liking. These guys have been, when they played, consistently great. So this, to me, comes down to the interesting thing is who's the other first team forward? Because obviously it's Giannis. Giannis is obviously a first team forward. Then the other one is between Kevin Durant and Paul George. And honestly, KD's having a really good year, but Paul George, if you have worked your way into the MVP conversation and the Defensive Player of the Year conversation, that to me is a very, very special season. Now, he has tailed off recently because it seems like he's not physically healthy. But that being said, I would pick Paul George, even though I know Kevin Durant is the better player. Paul George is having, to me, a slightly better season than Kevin Durant when it comes down to it. So Paul George gets my other one. So then the second All-NBA team is Kevin Durant and either LeBron or Kawhi or Blake. So those three make up the last three spots. And you got to go with LeBron because LeBron is LeBron. Like, LeBron should not be on the first All-NBA team, and this is something I strongly believe. He should not be on the first All-NBA team, and he should not be on the third. I think LeBron has to be the second All-NBA team just because LeBron is LeBron. He has the resume. He's had a great season outside of his injury. But despite the Lakers losing, so it's a combination of the injury and the Lakers record and their just overall spot in the standings that causes LeBron to be a second team. But LeBron is LeBron, so I put LeBron there, and then third team is Kawhi and Blake. So that rounds out my forward spots. Blake is playing absolutely phenomenal in Detroit. I've watched him this entire season drag the Pistons, especially honestly until February. Pretty much from October to February, Blake Griffin was dragging this team to every win it could possibly get. So that to me is Blake Griffin's having his best season, in my opinion, my personal opinion, even over the 2015 season where he played well in the playoffs. But regular season wise, Blake Griffin's having his best season here in Detroit. He's a totally evolved player. He can do so many things now. He's a better playmaker than he's ever been. He's a better shooter than he's ever been. He's just a better scorer than he's ever been. And he's really just shouldering a load that he's never had to shoulder outside of the times when Chris Paul was out with an injury. Now the centers, the last spots. So there's only 3 All-NBA centers, obviously with 3 teams. And this one to me is a discussion. I think there's 3 pretty favorable players, and with exception to Anthony Davis, because Anthony Davis, you can't have the season he had. He had a monster season, but his team was still poor, and his team was still struggling and out of the playoffs. And then you can't just throw away the last 35 games and still make an All-NBA team. I don't care how good you are, even though Davis is, when healthy, when engaged, better than all 3 of these centers. So he was somebody that I just wanted to mention that, yes, I thought about him. I know he exists, but he's out. He's out of the All-NBA discussion. So then the other 2 close cuts to me were Rudy Gobert, who's, again, really rebounded. He started off slow this year to the point where people were having discussions. Has the NBA finally figured out how to attack Rudy Gobert and take away some of his rim protection that he's just so well known for? So he was somebody who really, despite that rough start, has really turned it around since, and the Jazz record is a product of that turnaround. And then another one is Andre Drummond. Andre Drummond, I roasted him fairly often throughout the year, but he has played since February. He has really just been a whole nother level. The effort's been there pretty much every night. He's played extremely hard again. His defensive numbers are not the greatest, but pretty damn good. And of course, the rebounding is always there. He's going to win another rebounding title this year. So he is an absolute force on the rebounding on the glass, and that really, to me, it's just too little, too late for him. Honestly, if he had to stretch a little bit longer in the season, I might consider him. But the 3 I'm going with are Embiid, Jokic, and Towns. And I'm going in that order too. So Towns is third team because he's on the worst team of those. Embiid and Jokic are both on contending teams. And when it came down to Embiid and Jokic is playing great. He's playing on what's going to be the first or second best team in the West when it's all said and done. And that really means something to me because the West is loaded. And he's doing it without, keep in mind, no other All-Stars. Whereas Joel Embiid on Philadelphia has arguably 3 other All-Stars. Tobias Harris, I still feel, was robbed of an All-Star spot this year. And so Embiid has more talent. But when it comes down to it, man, Embiid is just way better defensively than Jokic. And Jokic has been fine, but he's not on Embiid's level. Embiid is a defensive player of the year candidate and an offensive monster. And Jokic just goes through, despite how much he does for the offense through his facilitation, he's just somebody who doesn't who you can't rely on to score like Embiid. And Embiid is just an absolute force on the offensive end. And I know he struggled in the playoffs last year, so we'll have to see. I'm actually curious on both Embiid and Jokic because I really wonder how much Jokic's game will translate to the highest level of the NBA playoffs. I really wonder how much they'll be able to take away from Jokic, and if he's now willing to score, just how good that Denver team is. That's my question going into the playoffs with them. But as far as this discussion, Embiid's the better two-way player, so he gets the first spot, and Jokic gets the second spot. Despite Jokic being a potential top 5 MVP candidate, both those guys are, Embiid and Jokic, but I think Embiid's just played better on both ends of the floor, so he gets the award for me, or he gets the first spot. Now let's do the award races really quickly, just because I don't think there's too much to talk about. MVP, I got Giannis. Harden did drop 57 last night, played extremely well, but Giannis is just, he's been more consistent throughout the year. He's on a historic team. This Bucks team is going to be, it's not going to be an all-time great team. It's not going to be a team that you're like, whoa, I can't believe it. But this is a team that's probably going to finish with 60 wins. And if they finish with 60 wins, that puts you up in a rarefied air. And he is on the team that is by far the best team. I think their net rating's still at like a 7. I think it's tailed off a little bit, but it was as high as 10 weeks ago. So, not only are they winning, but they're winning handily against most teams. And they're suffering some injuries right now, so they're going through a tough stretch. But overall, Giannis is playing fantastic. And he is the one flaw in his game, or I shouldn't say his game, but his MVP case, is the fact that he doesn't have that signature game. That signature game is essential when it comes to Giannis. Giannis is somebody who's had a bunch of great games. He had that 52-point game against the 76ers, and if they would have won that, that would have been his signature game. But Harden has the buzzer beater against the Warriors. Like, Harden just has these crazy, crazy games that are like they had no chance to win without James Harden that game. And Giannis doesn't have that. And that is an important thing. I don't believe it should be an important thing when it comes to the MVP race, but it is. If I'm being brutally honest, it is. Like, I remember when Russell Westbrook in 2015, or was it 16? I think it was 16. In 2016, when Russell Westbrook hit that buzzer beater against Denver from almost half court to win the game, that was one of those signature moments. And honestly, from that point on, it drastically swung Westbrook over Harden. Because if you remember, that was one that was a battle till the last kind of. Honestly, it was around this time. I believe it was about 10 games left in the season when that happened. And when Westbrook hit that shot, I still voted for Harden that year, and I think I'm still right to this day. But that was when the consensus turned to, okay, this is Westbrook's award now. This is Westbrook's award to win. So those signature games, they mean something, especially if they come late. Like if Giannis would have had that game against Philly this late in the season, despite their injury with Brogdon, like if he would have uplifted them over a contender in Philadelphia, that would have been the game. That would have been the game that went down as Giannis' signature win. So he needs that one game to really lock it away. But I still think even if he doesn't have it, I think just his consistency and the fact that he's also in the Defensive Player of the Year candidate, I think that just makes him the MVP candidate overall because he's just a monster. So let's transition to Defensive Player of the Year. I actually have Giannis for that award as well. I had Paul George for a while. I looked at Joel Embiid for a minute, but to me it came down to Giannis. He's averaging 13 rebounds a game, so he's averaging an insane amount of rebounds. Like that is Shaq level rebounds, and then you combine that with all the steals and blocks he's getting, like he's prime Hakeem Olajuwon. He is just a defensive force, and I don't think he'll get both. I think if he gets one, he won't get the other when it comes to the MVP and Defensive Player of the Year award, but I think he deserves both. I think he's been truly the best defensive player in the league this year, with consideration to Joel Embiid, Paul George, and then Rudy Gobert has also turned things around as well. Sixth man, going to make this short and simple. It's Lou Williams, nobody else. Not even close to another soul. The Clippers are going to get in the playoffs, and Lou Williams is one of the biggest reasons why. So Lou Williams, Sixth Man of the Year award, no question. At this point, it should be named the Lou Williams Sixth Man of the Year award. Most improved, I went with Pascal Siakam. I do want to give consideration to De'Aaron Fox, Sabonis from the Pacers, and then Giannis Antetokounmpo once again from the Bucks. I think he deserves a little bit of consideration, but Pascal Siakam's just made a leap. He single-handedly saved my fantasy season, so maybe I'm a little bit biased, but no, I mean, seriously, like, his game, when he's playing against all of those top-tier players and, like, Kawhi is out, Pascal just goes to another level, and I think that kid is a star. I think he's going to have a great future. Coming into this season, I thought he's a great player to have on a championship team. He's maybe like a great 4 or 5 glue guy starter on a championship team, but this season to me has proven that I think he's going to be a star. Like, I think he's an all-star candidate as early as next year, and I think he's somebody with a very bright future in this league. Rookie of the Year, this one's pretty easy. I know Luka's tailed off, but it is 100% going to be Luka. Luka Mania, everybody loves him. But I do want to give consideration to Trae Young, ironically the player that the two players that were traded for each other, essentially. Trae Young has really, really stepped up. That game against Boston, I remember watching that one, and just his composure, despite his defensive limitations, because we saw Kyrie post him up, and Trae Young couldn't do anything about it. But but with that being said, he came right back on the offensive end every time. So Trae Young, to me, is really just... The Hawks have been good this last, month and a half. They've been like a borderline East playoff caliber type team when it comes down to it. So they got a bright future. Trae Young's played extremely well after a rough start in the season. I give him credit because I did not think he was going to be this good, this quick, and I did not think he was going to be able to be this consistent. I didn't think Trae Young was going to be a guy that you could see playing for months. I didn't think he was going to be able to have like a Kemba November stretch where it's just a month long of you're just playing absolutely great basketball. And Trae Young, to me, is somebody who has done that within March and February, and that just surprised me. I didn't think he could do that this early in his league. So I'm going with Luka, of course, for MVP. But Trae Young gets some major consideration. I think Luka will win it unanimously, though. And that will conclude today's episode. I know I went a little bit long, so sorry about that. Here at about 28 minutes. But I do really love the All-NBA discussions. I really love the awards. Again, they have a tremendous impact on the league because Bradley Beal and Kemba, I mean, the way that spot goes could end up dictating this offseason. It could play a major role in this offseason. So this stuff is all very, very important, and I wanted to take very seriously, so I did a deep dive, and that will be it. So I'll next week I'll get back to the playoffs. We'll talk about the playoffs, and then the following week I will give my final awards if anything changes. If not, I'll just quickly recap, and then we'll do some more playoff discussion stuff. But playoffs is almost here. It's almost around the corner, guys. So stay tuned, stay motivated, and of course, stick on Sports Radio Detroit for your NBA content. Once again, I'm your host, Chris Platte. Thank you all for tuning in, and I will see you next week with some more NBA talk.
This has been an SRD production.
Because I feel like a salad tossing might feel good.
What?
Out of Bounds Detroit podcast. Tuesday morning and Friday mornings here on SportsRadioDetroit.com.